Comic Book Savant, episode 403. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing another fantasy casting. We do know that the deal is in the process of being finished. Hopefully, it might be finished by the end of the year between Marvel and Disney and Fox. So we did another fantasy casting for the Fantastic Four movie. This go around, we're going to be focusing on the X-Men because that would be the other big franchise that Disney would acquire through this acquisition of Fox film that would be woven into the MCU. But before we get into all that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. If you like my show, if you like my co-host show on YouTube, which is Serial at Midnight, my co-host for the Spinner Rack Bros, Heath Holland. If you like shows like those that are comic book related, you can find tons over at the Comics Podcast Network. There are literally hundreds of different shows related to comic books in general listed there. If you want a single person podcast like I am most of the time, except for Spinner Rack Bros, you can find those. You can find a two person or even roundtable discussions. They have podcasts listed there on particular characters or publishers, teams, etc. So you have a lot of variety to choose from. So definitely, if you have a moment, go check out the Comics Podcast Network over at comicspodcast.com. And if you're an inspiring podcaster and you're just getting started, definitely go to the site, click on it, see if you can reach the administrator of the Comics Podcast Network to see if you can get your show added. It'll help get it some exposure and help you grow your audience with a little boost, a little help from your fellow podcasters and so forth. So it's definitely an advantage either way. If you're a listener or you're starting in content, creating your own podcast, it has dual purposes there. So definitely it's worth checking out. It's a great resource. So comicspodcast.com for the Comic Podcast Network. Also, just want to give you guys some updates. I know this episode is later than what it normally is for what I release on the show. I've been having some setbacks with my health. I mentioned it before, like I've had some issues with my right foot. I had a little accident around the house last week that kind of set all that back. I was doing really well. Thought I was going to be clear coming out of the woods. Everything was healing up properly. I had a little mishap, a little accident, and kind of set everything back. So I've been in a huge amount of pain. I've had multiple doctor's appointments going on. So it delayed me creating stuff for here, the YouTube channel, also the Patreon feed. All that kind of stuff. So I do apologize. It's not my intention to delay the content that I'm putting out to you guys across the board. I just, it's kind of hard when you have something you love, like I love doing the show, and then like you have physical, things that kind of come up, and I've just been in extreme amounts of pain, and, I didn't want to be wincing, and even though you might kind of hear some of it in my voice, I try to make sure, I can focus on the content without as little pain as possible so I can get you out, the content you guys deserve. Also, I've kind of been at a crossroads on the whole, I've thrown a lot at you guys over the few months of trying to find ways to generate revenue for the show. I've talked about doing like the Amazon links I have on the Comic Book Savant website. I have a bookshelf section, so it's this Comic Book Savant /bookshelf where I had like Amazon affiliate links. I was pushing you guys to be like, if you're thinking about buying something that I mentioned, to click on those links. I didn't get the required sales again, so that kind of went to the wayside. I've tried those different things. The only thing that I could just say as a host, and again, just generating revenue for the show to keep the show going and doing other things. I have the Patreon campaign that I do mention from time to time. I'm more, I'm not in this to try to make a lot of money. It does cost money to produce the show, which I've talked about before. I know we all have extenuating circumstances. All of you guys might not be able to support the show financially. Like I said, it's different tiers to the Patreon campaign. The lowest tier is $1 a month. If you contribute $1 a month, it's for you to help support the show. You get access to the Comic Book Savant Extra feed. I was originally started out the Comic Book Savant Extra doing it here, but that's a Patreon only podcast that I do once a week. It's a little bit shorter content. Sometimes it's 15 minutes to a half an hour episode that I do every week for the Patreon specifically. You get access to that for just $1 a month, pledging to the Patreon campaign. I think that's, if you value the content that I do, that's a little donation. It's not even a quarter of what a regular comic book costs. So if you contribute to that, that helps a lot. Just $1 from the amount of listeners I have, goes a long way. I know sometimes you guys get tired of like the ads that I do for, in stock trades and stuff like that. Only reason why I do it is because it's a way to bring revenue in to help pay for things that are related to the show. It's things that I, want to grow and expand and improve upon. But those things. So again, I've tried different avenues. I'm just going to focus on now because I think I was sending you guys in so many other directions. So if first and foremost you want to support the show, again, I would just say go to patreon.com/comic book savant. It has all the breakdowns on the different levels. The minimal level that I ask if you have it in your hearts to do and help support the show. Again, just $1 a month goes a long way in helping me, because if everybody contributes $1, even half the listeners, throw $1 into the Patreon campaign per month, that helps out with all the expenses and books that I need to buy. Again, I want to start coming out and meeting you guys. So it opens up a lot of doors on what it allows me to do as a content creator. So definitely check that out. Don't worry about right now. I don't know what I'm going to do about the bookshelf thing and the Amazon links. Again, like I received the email saying I didn't meet the requirements on the click-through rate or whatever to get that fully approved. So I probably will take the bookshelf page down just for now. And like I said, I'm going to focus on you guys, the Patreon. Also, I talked about it before a couple of months ago with the T-shirts that I have. So if you want to, rep the show, I do have the Teespring store with the 2 T-shirt designs. Just so much other stuff has been going on. I haven't done I wanted to get some artists on board to do some cool designs or catchphrases or whatever from the show, like incorporated in a T-shirt design. That just got postponed, but just like I said, with my kind of health issues and putting out all the content on all the different platforms, it's been you guys have helped me so much this past year. Just having the courage to get the YouTube channel going, that's been putting more energy into the Patreon, getting a handful of Patreons at this point, helping support, and hopefully even bringing on more of you guys and doing specialized content for that. So when you guys contribute, you're getting value. I want you guys to not feel like, hey, you're contributing money and you're not getting anything out of it. So I wanted it to be a value-based proposition. You guys believe in me and you support me. I want it to be, hey, I get something different here that I don't just get from the regular podcast with the Comic Books on my extra episodes. And even with the YouTube channel, I try to make each experience unique to that platform. So you always have, it's all still comics related, but it's just a different take on it, so you're not getting the same thing every place from me. And it has allowed me a lot creatively, and I thank you all for it. And the support you've shown me, like on social media, I've been the worst at it. Trying to juggle content creation with social media on all the different platforms. You guys have been there. I see I see retweets, I see likes on my tweets. All of that goes a long way. I didn't mean to spend that much time talking about it, but it just means a lot. And that's where I'm trying to go with the show, going forward. I'm trying to get away from direct ad-based stuff. Like I said, the in-stock trades partnership has been great. We've been partnered since, I really started the show. It'll continue for the foreseeable future, but my hopes is through getting enough Patreon supporters, and the other things, I want to get it back-based, community-based, and not feel the need to have to do like the ad reads and stuff like that. And it's just support from the community, so we can kind of cut all that middleman stuff out and just focus on us having a good time talking about comics. So that's just the kind of update of what's been going on in my head, what's been going on with me physically, and why it's been a delay in content. But my hopes is to get everything back on track sooner than later. Like I said, my foot, like I said, it's been a big setback. It's going to be an ongoing situation, but I, kind of muscled through it earlier. So I'm going to try to stay ahead of the curve and, try to get some episodes, done in advance to keep the content consistent, coming out to you in a timely manner going forward. So with all that being said, jumping into the fantasy casting thing, I thought about it a lot, and I'm like, it's still up in the air because we had a trailer, and I talked about this in a previous episode. We got a trailer for X-Men Dark Phoenix, and it had one release date of February. Then they changed it like the next day to like in June of next year. We know, it's rumblings that the deal could be finished as soon as before the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So will that movie ever see the light of day? We don't know with all the changing of the dates. I know Fox has to do their due diligence of, making a viable product just in case something happens and that deal doesn't go through, that they still have a movie that they have to put out. So I totally understand that. But it makes me wonder. And when I was thinking about what would be the perfect casting setup, I started with the director, and we need something totally fresh and different from X-Men. And this is going to go with my makeup of the team as well as who's behind the scenes as well. When I start thinking about an X-Men movie for Marvel Studios proper, I start thinking about what would be a good director. And I think the action has been okay in the previous X-Men movies, but sometimes that has been not on the par that it should be, and not what you normally see with the normal like MCU movies at this point. They do a really good job as far as the higher end. And if we're thinking about we're incorporating X-Men into the MCU, this is gonna be on par with the Avengers, or Captain America, film, as far as the money that they are putting into it and the production budget. So you want to have a good action director. The two that came to my mind to be able to direct this, because it's going to be a lot of pressure. It's going to be big budget. It needs to be big action to match the names that you're attaching with the X-Men. They got to come out with a bang. They can't come out with a whimper with an X-Men movie. The two names that came to mind is Gavin O'Connor, which is did The Accountant, which I loved. And also I thought about F. Gary Gray. He's a really good director. He's worked on a ton of ensemble movies. He did Straight Outta Compton. He did Fate of the Furious, which was the last Fast and the Furious movie. He's done movies like Friday, The Italian Job, The Negotiator. He's done big studio movies, and he's done smaller stuff as well. He's done large ensembles, which this would be. He's done action extremely well because he's done quite a few action movies. And so I feel like he's one of the most underrated, I feel like, directors in Hollywood. And you tend to forget about F. Gary Gray and how long that he's been around and in the film business. And he has more hits than misses. But again, he's just so low key in demeanor. You just tend to not really think about him in the forefront of directors. He's not flamboyant in that way as certain other directors. So again, when you like when you think about it, I just looked him up on IMDb to just look, so he's done Fate of the Furious, Straight Outta Compton, Law Abiding Citizen, Italian Job, A Man Apart, The Negotiator, like I said, Set It Off, Friday. He also has done a lot of like video documentaries and long form videos as well. So he's done like most of these movies were pretty big movies. Now he's attached to he's working on the new spinoff, Men in Black spinoff, which I didn't know that he's directing that, which it has oh gosh, Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson in it. So I didn't know he was directing that. And then also I see on here IMDb that he's been announced to be the director for Mask. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mask. It depends on how old you are. I'm 43, so I grew up in the 80s. Mask was Mobile Armored Strike Command. It was a toy line that had a cartoon that was short-lived, but it was like a cool concept of transforming vehicles, and the characters had these masks that would drop from the like roof of their car, and it would give them special powers, and their vehicles would kind of morph or transform, not like into robots, but just like transform. Like they had was it a Trans Am? A Trans Am, like the arms were like would like open up the car, and they would have missiles, and they would be like it would be a turn into like a jet from a car. The villain, it was like I think the criminal organization was I can't remember what it was, but I remember the lead villain. He had, and because this was the only toy, they were so popular at the time, it was very hard to get the toys for Mask, and the only toy I could get was the villain, and he kind of had, I don't know if you guys remember in 80s, it was a TV show called like Airwolf, and it was kind of like the helicopter was a cross between like Airwolf and like the Cobra helicopters from G.I. Joe, and it was kind of cool, like the blades for the helicopter would like, would shut down, store in the like the shaft part of it, and it would turn into like a jet fighter. And I had that one toy. That was like the only one Mask toy that I could get at the time, because they would sell so quickly. It was super popular for like 2 years, and then it kind of just like faded into obscurity. But that's the other thing he's announced to direct. But I feel like he would be, because he's had a lot more experience with bigger budgets and ensembles. I think out of the two, and I love the way Gavin O'Connor does action. But overall, as far as the well-rounded and can handle the pressure of it being an X-Men movie, I think I would give the nod to F. Gary Gray. As far as writers, I think you want to do it right. And when I think of good writing in the MCU, we always fall back to Marcus and McFeely. I just think they have the pulse of the source material and what's going on with the MCU in general. They've written some of my favorite MCU movies. So to do X-Men right and have the story fit in properly with the rest of the MCU, I would go to their go-to writers to write the script for this film. Now, when it goes to the casting, I thought about this long and hard. I'm not going to get too deep into the villains and all that kind of stuff, because I think these parts are the most important parts in making this successful right now. Excuse me. When I think about the cast, I feel like, because you're going to warrant too many comparisons, and you want to distance yourself from the Fox films and iterations of them as much as possible, considering they had the original X-Men, then they had the First Class, and they did a whole merging, and then it was like just all over the place, and continuity was a straight mess. I think it would be kind of cool to distance themselves from all of that and not try to go with that traditional X-Men team that we've seen so many times already with Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Storm. Like we're gonna kind of shift away from that a little bit. And I thought about like what team, over all the years, all the different iterations of the X-Men, we want to start with something different, something fresh. What I came up with is, I want to say this was the mid 80s, late 80s, when the it was after like the Mutant Massacre and everything else, and the X-Men were kind of on the run, and they were in the Australian outback. I really enjoyed that section. Around that time we were introduced to Gambit. We had different like little storylines and plots going on at the time with Storm came across Gambit. He was kind of introduced in the book around that time. Also Jubilee, which I loved, and in the late 80s, early 90s, her incorporation into the X-Men, and she really gained more notoriety with the Fox X-Men cartoon as well, because she was a main member of that staff. So that team consisted of Rogue, Gambit, Beast, Cyclops, Wolverine, Psylocke, and Jubilee. And so you have Beast and Cyclops from the original 5. You got Rogue in there, which I always felt like I didn't have a problem with Anna Paquin, but I always had a problem with I didn't want her to be. They kind of put her in that Jubilee role in the original X-Men films, and I rather it had been Jubilee, and they had an adult Rogue right off from the outset. So when I thought about Rogue and who to cast as her, I thought about 3 actresses came to mind. I thought about Olivia Cook, Alexandra Daddario, and Karen Gillan. Now, I know Karen already plays Nebula in the MCU, but she's kind of unrecognizable to when, like, you see her in something like the latest Jumanji movie and stuff like that. And I really like her as an actress and her vibe and her personality, and I think she could bring a lot to the Rogue character. Alexandria Daddario has that look. She has that red hair. She can be like fiery and physical at the same time. Olivia Cook, I really dug her in Ready Player One, and again, redhead. I'm just thinking about that aspect of the character and looks as well as the acting skills. And I kind of feel like, she has that red hair. She's spunky from what we saw in Ready Player One. So I feel like all 3 of them could fit that mold. And you really can't go wrong with any of the 3, because I feel like they all are strong enough actors that they could do a good job in the role. When it came to Gambit, I thought about one person, and that was Theo James. He's the guy from the Divergent movies. What was his name? Four. And I kind of like his swagger, his build. I feel like even though he's English, I feel like he has the look, the length to be what I imagine Gambit to be in my head. And I think he could do a good job in age-wise. He would match up because, we always have the on and off again romance between Rogue and Gambit. So you want to have someone age-wise that could fit into who you're casting as Rogue. So I thought he would be a really good fit. I don't know if he can do the Cajun accent so much, but just as far as the look, the physicality, we know he can do great action stuff from the Divergent movies and all that kind of stuff. So, and I think he did one of the Underworld sequels as well. So he can do action. You've seen him in trench coats. He could pull that look off, I think, extremely well. When it comes to Beast, 2 actors came to mind for Beast for me. One is Kellen Lutz, and then another one is John Cena. With Kellen, and it all depends on what iteration of Beast that you go with. Over the years, in Hank McCoy's human form, he was never not ugly guy. Now in the First Class movies, they play it up where he's very much ashamed of being a mutant and his mutant abilities or whatnot with Nicholas Hoult, and that's a part of the character. But I just remember it from the original X-Men comics, and even things like later on with X Factor, especially when X Factor first launched, and it was the original 5 X-Men. That Hank was not he was kind of a built dude, not a bad looking dude. So Kellen Lutz has that look, and he has that likable, charming personality, I feel. So I feel like he could cover that well. And And also, he showed like in the Twilight movies, he can be kind of buff, and he did the Hercules movie as well. So he can kind of be buff in that kind of build that I always remembered Beast kind of being drawn. Now, how he could cover the smart part, as far as the being a high-end scientist level as the Beast and the special effects side of it, I don't know. But I feel like he has that, to me, that Hank McCoy, when he's drawn that way, part well. You know, and I don't know I don't know, as far as with Beast, would it be best to do practical effects with Beast like they kind of did with First Class with Nicholas Hoult, or just do more CGI and it's a motion capture performance? I don't know at this point. The other actor came to mind is John Cena, because he definitely has that build, that muscular kind of build to him. I feel like the more I've seen John Cena in movies, the more, like, as far as acting range and comedic, he can have that that nice touch, that Marvel comedic touch. He has proven he can do comedy extremely well. So I feel like, again, he has that big, likable personality that Hank is known to be and have. And then at the same time, I feel like in interviews, if you've ever seen John Cena do a lot of interviews, he's very learned and he's very astute. So I think he could really pull off the Beast once the transformation and being Beast. He would be very believable in that role once people can separate John Cena, the wrestler, from John Cena, the actual person. He's a very smart guy. He knows multiple languages, so on and so forth. He's very, very astute. So I think he would be a good pick in this role. Next, for Cyclops, I thought about this long and hard, and one name really stuck out, and it was Ansel Elgort. I liked him in Baby Driver. He was also in the Divergent movies as the brother. He kind of had his like ups and downs in those movies, as being like, he was just always not the best person. So I feel like he can straddle that line well, of being likable and then that kind of a prick at the same time. He showed in Baby Driver that he has a lot of range. So I feel like this right now would be like a perfect breakout role. He's an actor that can get in that, because it's kind of been like the Cyclops role has always been kind of cursed for the actor that had played him. I think James Marsden was decent, but they never wrote the character well to give him much to work with, and it just seems like it's been cursed. But I feel like he has the chops that he could really take that role and make it his own and really excel with that character, because it's so much underneath the layers of what Cyclops and Scott Summers is, and it could take him. It would be cool to get a young, strong actor like him in that role and evolve him, because Cyclops went a lot of different places in the comics over the years, from hero to villain, and like to have him running loose in the MCU and building him up over a set amount of time, and you get that switch where maybe down the road the X-Men would have to go against him, would be a cool storyline with him being the right actor behind it to build up to that over a series of films, for sure. Next, we have Wolverine. And I try to rack my brain. And guys, all I still see is Hugh Jackman. And I mean, it's still fresh because he just stopped being in the role. I just don't know. I feel like they would have to find an unknown actor. I couldn't think of one to be able to replace him, and then kind of fall in line age-wise with the other actors, to be in that kind of same range. You want him to kind of be able to blend in, not overshadow the other cast. We want it to be more focused on a Rogue and Gambit type, and more so than with the Fox situation where Wolverine was just the centerpiece of everything. Kind of that will come in the MCU with time, but not right off the bat. You gotta want someone that's going to be subtle, and with this movie, you want the focus on Wolverine. He's going to be attached to Jubilee, because that's really when she was introduced, and he took her under his wing. And I would want that to be a major part of the storyline and launching off this MCU X-Men franchise. Next, for Psylocke, I thought about two people, Katrina Law and Selena Jade. I'm just familiar with them from the CW Arrow series. Good action. They look more the role, of the Psylocke in her ninja persona. Katrina Law's phenomenal. She plays on Arrow Nisa Al Ghul, the other daughter of Ra's al Ghul. She does a great job, and Selena Jade did Shadow, if I remember correctly, on Arrow as well. I think Katrina Law I like better. I just like she has a certain charisma to her and she had more time on the show, so I'm more familiar with her, and I feel like she could really get in that role, and it's not too far-fetched from the role that she has played in as Nisa Al Ghul in Arrow. So she would be a good fit just based on her playing a similar character on another show, and I would love to see her get on the big screen. So she would be my first choice. Last but not least, for Jubilee to round out the team, I would, and I know they wouldn't want to bring any of the actors over from the previous situation, but I feel like in this instance, it's well deserved. Lana Condor, she was cast as Jubilee in the last X-Men movie, Apocalypse, and it was just horrible because she did a lot of press, and I saw her do a lot of different interviews in regards to it, and I felt like she was so perfectly cast in the role, and pretty much all her scenes got just cut out, and it was just so disheartening because she was so enthusiastic about it. She so looked the part, and I don't even think she had a speaking line in the show. They literally just cut everything out, and it was just so disappointing because she was so enthusiastic about it. So I would love to see her get a fair shot in playing the character this time for real. And she would be the right age, especially if you cast the right age for Wolverine, that it doesn't look creepy or weird that he would mentor this young girl, that they would play well off one another. I just feel like she deserves the shot because though she was in the Fox movie, really, if you blink, you would miss her because they cut down so much of the stuff, and she talked about in detail when they did the press run, different scenes she were in that never saw the light of day. And it's just, like I said, it was just disheartening, and I thought she did a really good job and had the look of the character. So I would like to see her get a shot back as Jubilee. But I would like that Australian Outback team. The main antagonist was the Reavers, and it was one particular issue. They were in this abandoned town in the Outback. They had the the guy Gateway. He was a mutant that could teleport. He would create gateways and teleport the X-Men all over the place. And it was one particular issue. I think it was just Wolverine and Jubilee, and the Reavers had found them, and it was tracking them down. It was one of the most tense comic book issues ever. But I just love that era of the X-Men. I think during that time you had Dazzler come in for a little bit. You had Forge. They had so many different X-Men floating in and out. That was not the original core X-Men. And it was such a different time because they've always kind of been in New York. To see them in a totally different setting, they kind of were regrouping. It was a very interesting time for the X-Men. So I would like to see, because we've been stuck on that one era, and it's been so many different generations and iterations of the X-Men. And I just feel to distance themselves from all the comparisons and attach themselves to all the minutia that's attached to all the previous Fox stuff, they would want a totally different take and a different iteration of the team, not with the same core base. I would think. I could be wrong, and they'll go with the original five and start from the very beginning. Who knows? It remains to be seen. But that would be what I would like to see. Because I was really thinking long and hard about what era, to kind of get away from that core team that would be different and it's a different take for people to consume, because if you just stick with the same thing, it's like, okay, we've already seen this, now it's just new actors and maybe it's done a little bit better. But if the setting is totally different, Australian outback, they shoot a lot over there anyway, it just kind of would make sense logistically and all the way around. But that's just my thoughts. Like I said, it's rough. As far as a particular storyline, like I said, Feige changes a lot of stuff out anyway. So this would be the base for them to work off of. If I think of more detailed stuff, I'll revisit this with like more specifics as far as source material. But outside of that era, the Australian era of the X-Men is where I think it would be at. Nice visuals, nice scenes that they could do. I think it would really be cool. But let me know what you guys think. You can always message me on the website at comicbooksavant.com. If you go to the contact us page, you can email me directly from the site. You can hit me up on social media at comicbooksavant on Twitter and Instagram, and let me know what you think. Feedback is always welcomed. Let me know what era X-Men or what X-Men team you would like to see in a reboot, if or when it happens, on what team you would like to see show up in the MCU. As always, like I said, the website, comicbooksavant.com. Also, don't forget, as I didn't do it in the beginning, to check out my sponsor for this episode, which is InStockTrades.com, one of the best places to go online for collected editions and so forth. They have discounts, 35, 42, and up to 50% off. If you place an order $50 or more and you're a U.S.-based customer, you get free shipping. If you're an international customer, you still get all the great savings, and you have some of the most competitive shipping rates around. So you also definitely want to consider it if you don't live here in the States, that you still save quite a bit of money with the discounts you get. And again, the international shipping rates are pretty competitive to what you're going to get out there elsewhere. But that's all I really have for you guys for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to do more of these fantasy casting things in the future as they come up. I will try to make sure I have an episode ready for you guys on Tuesday of this week coming up. And like I said, I'm working hard to get everything back on track within the next week to 2 weeks. Get back on the regular schedule with how the episodes dropped. Again, if you're also considering becoming a Patreon, just check out the Patreon page. It is www.patreon is patreon.com/comicbooksavant, and it'll show you the different tiers that you can contribute under. And again, it's a monthly thing. It bills you. It's a reoccurring billing thing. It bills you at the beginning of each month. Again, the base tier is just $1 a month, and that again would give you access to the Comic Book Savant extra feed, which I do those episodes every week for the Patreon exclusive. They are only released on that platform. So again, just for $1 a month, you get access to that whole feed. So you get 2 episodes. So you get the 4 episodes I normally do weekly here, plus 4 more via that feed for just $1 a month, which I must say is a good value if you like the sound of my voice and like the passion that I talk about comic books with. I'm worth $1, I think. Don't you think I'm worth $1? I think I'm worth $1. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I'll be back next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys have a good weekend. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.